I'm joined today with Anete and Daniele, who set up an agency called No Shame in late 2020. Is that right, guys?
Correct.
Yeah.
3 years to
Lovely.
date.
Thank you very much for joining me. Can you talk me through the process of starting No Shame? And, have you always wanted to be your own bosses and find your own clients and that sort of thing?
So the idea of agency, in fact, wasn't really born on day one. It was more like, let's do artistic projects outside of working hours, because as we were employed by the same agency, it was let's do something creative all together. We were 3 partners at the beginning, and just let's put our skills to something what we really feel passionate about.
Yeah, No Shame started as an idea like around 3 years ago, or we were working together. I think we were feeling a bit overwhelmed from and not so proud of the work we were doing, hence the name No Shame. We are still young, a young studio, so the process is still work in progress.
You were asking us if we always wanted to own our creative studio. I think for me, yes. I think that's something I realized when I was 20. I had a feeling this would be really, I can do it in a way, because at the time I was internship in another design studio, and I kind of was exposed to what that life looks like. And it's quite nice to get that experience early on to understand what the industry is, how does it operate. And I think that gave me a lot of bad ideas in my head. Yes, I can do it on my own without knowing how hard it is and what sort of sacrifices you're going to make in order to to make that dream come true. Somehow, after finalizing the first project, which we did on the side, we were like, right, how about if we actually do this full time? If we, get like clients on board, and what if we could be in charge of the work we do, and we actually can select the clients and projects by putting our skills in place to help other studios and organizations to grow.
It's interesting. And I guess one follow-up to that I have would be, did you find that there was any pressure to just, oh, well, I've got to take any job, we've got to take any job we can to pay the bills and keep the lights on? Or do you find that actually there's kind of a bit of power in being a bit picky?
We have said no in the past, and obviously that does influence our cash flow and like the revenue and so on, and those probably are not smart financial decisions. However, we always wanted to stay true to who we are and to our values. And somehow, luckily, with the name we chose for ourselves and the values we put out there, we somehow did attract, in fact, the right people, which was really good for us.
Okay, that's interesting. So it goes right back to even the name.
Yeah, it does, because whenever someone asks you, like, why No Shame, we literally have 5 minutes of
That's
of
great.
lecture
Okay.
prepared of like why it's No Shame and what we stand for. In fact, our first website, which we had when we launched, was very informative about the mistakes that everyone makes them, and in fact, it's also like helps us to navigate through everyday tasks, because sometimes what happens, the fear stops you, and where does the fear come from? It's coming from mistakes. And then that also speaks to other founders of like other organizations. And when you think about how the system we live in, it's like all like based on multiple mistakes. Essentially, it's not very sustainable to live in a world like that. And if we start a conversation with our clients about it, that it's going to resonate with them, and they're going to want to continue the dialogue. I think that's very important as well.
Can you talk me through your creative process a bit, and maybe just speak a little bit about, do you think it's important to have your kind of own signature art style as an agency, or do you think it's maybe better to be versatile?
So essentially, since the service we give out is at the moment branding and animation, so obviously for both of since those are very separate services, I think there are 2 different processes in place. For a branding, for instance, project, what happens is after we have received a brief from the client, we have to have a conversation with them. We send out a questionnaire to really get like as much information as possible out of them, because sure, it's one thing that they have like sent us over, we want this and that, and then essentially we need to find that what's the challenge, what is the problem we are solving, and we love to involve them within our process, especially in the early stages, because sometimes we do ask the questions they haven't really thought about, but then we can actually explain them why this is actually important to us in our process. Once we have received all the answers to our questions, we put together like a summary of it, and we would kick off everything with a mood board, which is with inspirational images, but it also consists of like some design elements. So it's, I would say, a stylescape. So it's not just like inspirational image, but it also comes along with a typography we can imagine to work for this specific branding, or it could also be design elements, as I did mention before, colors, typography, and anything what kind of feels all right and fits within the direction we have essentially imagined for them. And it usually is 2 to 3 directions, and we keep them quite diverse, I would say. And I find it really, really helpful to put every single design element we do for them on an application. So show immediately how it's going to look like in real life. Like if you are designing a logo, put it on a website, put it on a billboard, like literally like put it in like real life situations. I think that's really important. And yeah, like once the direction has been signed off from a client, then the hard work starts because that's when it gets really really interesting, and you get down to prepare and organize design systems and make all the rules of how, you know, they can use the branding and how they should not use the branding. And
yeah, well, for motion is we have a very similar process. I mean, we involve the clients at all the stages. We have this questionnaire situation. We understand the brief and the goal of the project, and then we move to mood board situation. Maybe the research and development part is a bit longer probably than the branding, because there is animation to do. So we need to figure it out how to do some transition, for example, or which style to use on how to create the elements. So define the style in after the mood board part, and the storyboard part is quite important. It's quite time consuming, and helps a lot later on when is the production part, right? Because you already have a clear idea of the style and how to create the stuff. So it's kind of important, that part, because the client has completely feedback, can give us all the right comments, so we can, that's helped a lot to define the whole project. But everything else is very similar to the branding.
but you also did ask about if having our own art style is more important than having a versatile creative work, I guess. And I think what's interesting about the studio, at least that's what we wanted to do, and I think we still do actually plan in the future to have, that the No Shame essentially has multiple pillars. Like one would take care of the client work, because the client work has to solve their problems. It can't be pleasing our egos.
Sure.
if you know what I mean. Sort of that was the idea, that No Shame essentially also has this artistic side where we literally do passion projects, self-initiated projects, and this is where we develop our art style.
No, I think that's fair enough, and I think it's interesting what you've just said about when it's client work, you have to solve their problems, and you might think in the back of your mind, I'd love to do a video in this style, but you can't kind of cram that into a brief just for fun.
Mm-hmm.
It has,
because then
the
you're
brief
pleasing
has to
yourself.
be right.
Yeah, you're putting yourself like in a position where you're trying, as an artist, but that's not the right place to do that. It's about the client. He's paying, like essentially whoever is paying for the song picks the song.
Exactly. Where can we go to learn more about you? Where can we go to learn more about No Shame?
No Shame Creative Studio on Google, and we have our Instagram account, which we are not really big on. We're not very active, but it's there. So yeah, it's just we have actually really cool collaboration coming up with another organization. So we will see you on dance floors.
That's great. All right, thank you so much.